Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Glad to have you here for our September 15th meeting for our Board of Directors, and all of you have the agenda. I now call the meeting to order.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Chairman McCaggis.
Here.
Dr. Thomas.
Here.
Mr. Broker.
Here.
Mr. Dawson.
Yes, he's on his way.
Okay. Mr. French.
Here.
Mr. Holmes.
Here.
Mr. Mamadol.
Here.
Ms. Osborne.
Here.
And Ms. Stone.
Present.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for August the 18th. They were all transmitted to all of the members of our board. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes?
Just to say, usually the roll call was in here, but it wasn't in the minutes. In my vote, it was.
You got that?
It's there.
It's not, it just goes straight into.
The meeting.
Oh, there it is, okay, never mind.
Okay, next action item, award of legislative advisory services contract. Chad?
Well, we have to do the approval of the.
Oh, yeah, I forgot it. We need a motion on the floor to approve those August the 18th minutes.
Second.
Have a motion and a second for the approval of the August 18th minutes. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next, the award of legislative advocacy services contract. Chad?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Staff is requesting the board approval contract for legislative services to Squire Patton and Boggs. In June, RFP was issued for legislative services at the local, state, and federal level. We received 5 proposals, one from Cornerstone, one from Kurt Norton, one from Matthews and Maxwell, one from Squire Patton and Boggs, and one for the Vacker firm. The evaluation was based upon the price proposal, work plan, staffing, project organization, and past performance. There were 4 firms that were brought in for a verbal evaluation or interview. From the federal level, it was Squire Patton and Boggs. They received a score of 93.3. Kurt Norton received a score of 80.9. Cornerstone received a score of 76.8. Also, as part of this RFP, that was a state and local advocacy program, and Squire Patton proposed a joint partnership with the Vacker firm, which gave them an average of 86.95. The Vacker firm was 80.67, and Cornerstone was 76.8. The score between Squire Patton and the Vacker firm is the average of the 2 individual scores of the firm. The staff looked at the process, went through the process of evaluating what was in our budget based upon the proposals that were received and evaluated the cost. As a result of that, the evaluation committee has put forth a recommendation, sent a recommendation to me, and I upheld the recommendation and forwarded the recommendation to the board. Therefore, we as the staff are requesting the board award a federal level contract to Squire Patton and Boggs and authorize the CAT CEO to negotiate on CAT's behalf to obtain the best possible price for the services rendered. And as part of this is just for the federal, and that we would look at the state and local legislative advocacy program once our new chief development officer comes on board, and pending the financial success we're able to receive at the federal level.
Just a real quick question, and really more of a rhetorical question. I assume that in the interview process that the hopes for additional grant money and additional funding will offset the additional cost of Squire Patton and Boggs.
That is correct.
I mean, I think we've got to move forward, and I don't think that, based on what Kurt Norton, that's who we were currently using.
Yes, Kurt Norton was our incumbent at the federal level, and the Vacker firm at the state and local level.
Right, but I'm talking about now just the federal level, and Kurt Norton, I don't know what they have been doing for us recently, but I haven't seen anything that seems to be outstanding or helping us move forward. And so, I'm delighted that we're going to choose a different firm, and hopefully, how long is this contract for?
It is a contract for up to 5 years.
But is it renewed every year?
We're proposing a 2-year contract with 3 1-year options.
Okay, the only reason I ask that, if, because of the additional cost of this firm, if we're not seeing a return,
Then we will have the option at some point.
then I want to know that we have options.
Yes.
One more question.
Any other, James?
It stated here that they have retained some local talent from Savannah area.
In terms of which aspect, in the common areas?
Are they connected with any firm here? Are the firm here connected with them, or how is that?
Well, they have a unique appreciation for the Savannah area.
Mhm.
So, yes.
Who's the talent?
This is the new firm that former Congressman Jack Kingston is with.
Jack is with this one.
Yes,
But he won't be able to actually have boots on the ground until November, is that correct?
At some point, it will be in the future. What would have to happen is this board traditionally adopts this legislative agenda at the December board meeting.
Mhm.
So at this point, we would have to move with some haste to finalize the contract, and then we'd have to have an onboarding process, as well as either a board workshop or during a board meeting to begin to develop the legislative agenda with the assistance of the lobbyists for formal adoption before
Right, but
December.
when is it's a 1-year period before,
Right.
an elected official
Right,
can.
but the interesting thing about Squire Patton Boggs is that they have an area of specialty in transit.
Oh, I know
So-
that. I mean, I did a little bit of researching when we met with them, especially the young lady who was with the Department of Transportation.
Right.
Very, very bright lady. But I just want to make sure that we're in compliance with the law, that
Yes, we will.
he will not be actively engaged until
That's correct.
after.
And I'm not sure he'll be actively engaged or registered as a lobbyist at that point. But you know, that's to be determined. But the interesting thing is that the firm itself is probably uniquely qualified within the transit industry and represents most of the top transit systems in the country.
Well, I recognize that. And what was the young lady's name that was with the Department of Transportation? She was extremely well-versed on transportation issues. And I can't remember her name, but she was really remarkable.
Is this the one that came to one of our meetings several years ago?
No,
I don't think that was Miss
No.
Little. I have her name in the, submissions, and I'll get it.
I was just curious, because she really, I don't know how long she was with the Department of Transportation, but she really had an in-depth insight as to what we might need going forward.
The young lady you're speaking about, her name is Sherry Little, and she's with the Spartan Group. They did not submit a
Okay.
proposal, but she was a former FTA administrator. But we did use them for other aspects, because when we had a couple of legal issues at the feds, the Spartan Group, Sherman Miller was also FTA's general counsel, so we employed his services back a few years ago as we were going through some transitional issues.
Wayne?
Bill? So what are they gonna be carrying for us at the national level? I mean, what specific items are we gonna be looking for them to do for us?
That's actually up for the board to decide over the
Okay.
next couple of months. Obviously, staff will have some recommendations, but whether the board decides to adopt
Money.
those or not.
Yeah.
But if you're talking, moving forward, obviously with, rolling stock capital equipment replacement, expansion of some of our other capital programs, so it'll be capital initiated.
Right. And one thing I've never seen is some sort, and, you know, we hear, I mean, you could say that when we learn that we get these grants, that's a sort of report. But we never really get reports back, particularly on the national level, as from these lobbying firms as to what they've really done for us. And I mean, you know, you can parse through all the grants and, you know, all the reports that we get, but we never get anything specifically from
Right.
them.
Okay.
And we pay them a lot of money. Yeah.
We can certainly incorporate that.
Yeah. Just-
Wayne?
I was just wondering what the time frame is for awarding the state and local contract. I was a little bit concerned that, you know, prior to heading into the next
We
state
would,
building.
I would imagine, by the end of November, we're gonna have a decision. So if we do something, it will come back to the board in November.
If it's not already there, as Bill was just talking about, let's make sure it's in the contract that they have to issue reports to us, and what we want them on a basis of being up to date. In other words, we shouldn't be getting here something 3 months later that you know, something went up and they tried to get it and was unable to do it, and that's understandable. But we need to know, this board, like it was discussed here, and other members of this board have said, hey, we're not getting the information about what's going on in Washington. It's being paid for, but we need to get that information. So let's make sure that's part of that contract.
Yes, sir.
I would think they could give us a monthly report, Mr. Bill. Be a good time to
Yeah.
get it.
Well, I mean, we get, reports, but yeah, we can certainly have them tailored and altered to, go to the board as opposed to just the staff. But yeah, that's fine.
Any other questions? Okay, next item.
We have to vote on the.
Need
I'll
a
make a
vote
motion
on
to
that,
approve.
what I just brought up. We need a second.
Second.
I have a motion on the floor and a second for the service contract. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. All right, the presentations now, the transit opportunity, Chad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this time, we have a presentation. I'd like to introduce, one of our tenured, board members, Bill Broker, of a presentation on transit equals opportunities.
Thank you very much.
Transit equals opportunity.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Chad, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for letting me put this on the agenda. I think this is a really interesting and important item for us to take a look at today. One of the things the chairman has told us for years is how difficult it is for a lot of people to get around, you know, in our community, and a lot of people really don't have the wherewithal to do that. And so, you know, there are two things that I think we hear a lot about. We hear a lot about job growth in our community and all the new opportunities that are available for folks. But at the same time, we're hearing a lot about poverty and the difficulties it is presenting. And, you know, every day we read about shootings and the like. And much of it, you know, is a result of the poverty that exists within our community. So one of the things I've been thinking about is sort of the role that transit plays in providing opportunities for people to move out of poverty. And I think of transit really not, I really don't think of us as looking at the expansion of CAT, but I look at CAT as being a vehicle for the expansion of opportunity in our community. So what I've done today is I've asked Nick to come, and you know, as you all know, that Nick is the senior planner for CAT and the director of the DOT service, to make a presentation. Nick knows a lot of the emerging areas with respect to transit. And Nick and I have talked about this topic considerably. And we're really fortunate to have teamed up with Suzanne Donovan, who many of you know. Suzanne is the director of Step Up Savannah, which is the city's anti-poverty initiative. It's been in the news a fair amount, and Suzanne is very much aware of the difficulties that poverty present, but she's also very familiar with steps that we can take within our community to do something about it. And I might remind us that the transit was one of the primary focuses of Step Up from the early days, and it was Step Up that brought to us the whole issue of the transfer. and reinstating the transfer within our system. And it was one of the resident leaders who came to us on Step Up's behalf and basically made the presentation that led to us reinstating the transfer. So with Nick and Suzanne, I'll turn it over to y'all, and you can make this presentation. Thank you again for letting me bring this to y'all.
Great, thank you, Bill.
All right, so thank you again. My name is Suzanne Donovan. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and for the opportunity to talk about something that's actually very near and dear to my heart. As Mr. Broker just said, it really has been a core issue in the Step Up Savannah agenda from the very start. And one of the first things that the researchers from UGA were looking at in the early 2000s was essentially that mismatch or disconnect between where the projected high-wage jobs were going to be growing in Weston, Savannah, and where our transit routes were essentially leading at the time. Can we go with this?
Yeah, sure.
Is it this? Okay, so this is just a bit of an outline of what we're going to be going after here. So obviously, it's not news to anybody here that we have high poverty rates, both in the city and in Chatham County. And we also have a fairly high percentage of folks, households without a personal vehicle, and then many, many more households with just one vehicle in the household. But even so, I'd like to suggest that we actually could reframe this problem, and that you, as leaders in this particular field, can actually help to reshape how we talk about these issues to bring more clarity to the discussion.
I don't want to get off track here, but something that when Howard and I were out in Denver is transit was not associated with poverty. It was connecting people with the community to grow.
Right.
And so I would love to see us get away from transit is for poor people.
Right. That's exactly what
transit is now a new way of thinking to avoid congestion, to get you from point A to point B as quickly as possible, and to remove the stigma of that's just for people that are of lower income. I mean, I think it's a movement that needs to be made, because if not, I don't think we're going to grow. So I guess I just have a little bit of a problem with that slide, and maybe I jumped the gun on you, but I want to erase this whole concept of public transportation is for those that cannot afford a car. If I could get I live on the end of Whitfield Avenue, if I could easily get downtown other than driving my car to the mall, I would hop on a bus and then I wouldn't have to worry about parking. And I could do some work on the way down there. But when you present a slide like that, to me that is not helping us grow. It's just my personal opinion, and it's not directed at you personally. From what we saw with the young people in Denver, public transportation is the way to go.
Mary?
That's another marketing piece. However, if you went through one of the, what do you call those things?
The poverty program.
Simulation.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is that transportation impedes people from getting work. Therefore, they stay in the poverty cycle. So, your statement is more from a marketing standpoint, I believe. Mine is from reality. People can't get to jobs.
Well, I understand that, but I'd like to see it all rolled into one and not just one headline. Maybe, what is the problem? We want to get people to work. We want to make transportation accessible to all. And I don't know, maybe it's just me.
Priscilla?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mrs. Stone, you're right on target, as well as Mrs. Osborne. Both points are taken. However, it is being perceived and has been perceived as long as I've lived that transit is for poor people, period, and that there are no usages for other people to even consider riding, transit. When we were in Denver, Mrs. Stone, and I don't know who else was there. And I was truly impressed with the way that they have been able to advance in the industry of transportation because of them looking at it from a standpoint of people rather than just one class of people. That's where we've got to get away from in a lot of things. And once we can overcome that, I'm not saying that what you're doing here today doesn't have some relevancy to what we're talking about, but that should not be the key issue in terms of wanting to, you know, be a part of transit.
I have to back up on my statement. We're here talking about step up and the poverty, the 25.9 people in poverty. Their big issue is transportation, and we can't eliminate that.
No.
Now, the other piece, and I don't disagree with Priscilla or Helen, the other piece is a marketing piece. It has nothing to do with whether people are in poverty or not, and we can't. Those are two separate entities.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, we'll let Ms. Donovan continue.
Right.
But we made a conscious decision 3 years ago, I believe, to address this issue from both ends. And if you see the way that we're addressed organizationally, we have bifurcated or divided our traditional marketing program into two segments. One is outreach, which was targeted after our traditional and our base riders of public transportation in this community. Separated that from marketing, which is what we've identified as our growth opportunities to begin to change the image of public transit in our community and what we do. So we are going after the future without forsaking our base.
Great.
Right, and just to piggyback on that, I think we're definitely all on the same page, because really what I'm talking about is, yes, it's a core issue in our community, but what we're talking about really is reframing that discussion. And so in ways, it is both about marketing, like how we present this issue in the community, but it's also about recognizing that transportation, in fact, brings access to opportunity. So I think that is the framework that we're talking about. It's access to opportunity and growth, frankly. And again, I think in Denver we've seen that, in Detroit we've seen that. So I think we're absolutely on the same wavelength on that, and I appreciate that. And I think you're absolutely right. You don't want to be in a position where you're constantly sort of affiliating CAT with poverty. I mean, just to be perfectly blunt about it.
Because you want to encourage all people to use it.
That's absolutely right. So I will say that there's been a lot of research recently on what is on using transportation as access to opportunity. And simply put, both location and transportation matters when it comes to people's lives. Where you grow up and your ability to move out of an economically segregated neighborhood makes a difference in social mobility, even more than various things like crime and educational test scores. So it's simply not just, it's not simply about sort of getting around, but literally opening opportunity and connecting people and resources. And I feel that we need to be thinking more about mobility as the key to actually changing patterns and opening doors. So rather than talk about route expansion, let's start talking about opportunity expansion, because that's what's at stake here. Mobility changes people's lives. So it probably goes without saying that our employers and businesses expect people that they hire to be able to show up to work every day on time. But we also need to consider, or perhaps remember, that people are making decisions all the time about where they can live and work based on transportation. And the system that our policies and practices have actually created here in Georgia are such that those households without a car or with one car can only get to jobs that are on transit routes, which essentially solidifies our pockets of our neighborhoods of those who have and those who don't. And this is not just true in Savannah or urban areas. Not long ago, I was reading some research by GBPI that our various folks in suburban areas are also having great difficulty getting from suburban area to suburban area, again, around access to jobs. It's that same equation. So again, it's not just people in inner core areas that are not able to get out, but people that are not able to get around in our suburban areas in Georgia. So we've essentially built a system, there we go, in this country, broadly, that relies very much on personal vehicles, and it functions, sort of, for people who do have money and resources. Though a lot of people would argue that that is at great cost to society and to our environment. It does not work so well for lower income families. The working poor actually do pay a higher percentage of their earnings on transportation than people with resources and money. Poor families actually pay more for financing a car, as they do for paying for mortgage. They pay more for insurance, and they often have to pay more for maintenance. It's now commonplace for insurance companies to set individual rates based on credit scores. And we also know that in Chatham County, we have an incredibly high percentage of individuals with subprime credit. So the lack of transportation out of our high poverty neighborhoods around the city and among our suburban outlying areas not only means that families are regularly facing tough calls and choices about allocating their resources, but it fundamentally frames choices about where they can live and, of course, work. So, again, where we live matters. Where we live in relationship to employment, particularly high-paying jobs, is really the key. And concentrated employment centers, again, in our area, largely to the west and the south, that are not connected through transit routes means those jobs are simply not available to too many families who most need them. Limiting transit service and acting as if our different communities and cities are islands that are not connected to one another in this region actually limits the opportunities for everybody who is seeking to participate. Whether or not that's the intention, that's the effect.
So I'm going to get a bit more into the nuts and bolts of how transit really impacts families in our area. And as Suzanne mentioned, location matters, and this is a bit of just a refresh of some of the items she mentioned. But when you don't have transit access in an employment center, folks who do not have access to vehicles simply cannot work there. If you have a one-car household, it just makes it much more difficult. And when we limit our transit system, we limit our opportunities for our community. And on the flip side of that, when we are able to reduce commuting times, we're able to make our communities more stable. And I think this is a really important takeaway when you think about time budgeting for people who are working out there, how they spend their time. And if they're spending more time in transit, that means they're spending less time with their family, less time working on other issues in their communities, less time on education in particular. In terms of the key aspects of public transit that truly affect this topic, I'm going to go through 6 broad categories. The first one is potentially goes without saying, but we'll say it anyway. It's where we have stops. If we don't have a transit stop at a location, it's simply impossible to serve that area and to make sure that people can get access to jobs or services in that destination. Frequency of services is also a critical factor. This is something that benefits everybody in the community regardless of income level. More frequent transit service allows you to be more flexible with your schedule. When your plans change, when your situation with your family or your job is unexpectedly disrupted, you have the ability then to change your plans and to reprogram your day. Span of service is also essential when talking about access to jobs and access to opportunity. If our transit service does not line up with the times when shifts start and end, it simply will not be an option for people who have those types of jobs. So we need to make sure that we're covering both the early shifts and the late shifts, and whenever it's possible to make sure that we're getting people to their jobs on time and then getting them back home at a reasonable time. Speed of travel here is linked with frequency, but sort of in an inverse way. When we set up services that are express type services that have fewer stops, rapid services or limited type services, you might call them in other systems, this allows people to use their time more efficiently. And if we're able to value people's time and prioritize their time in that way, it helps them spend more time with their families, spend more time on education and developing their communities. And that's really essential for helping people escape the cycle of poverty that we're discussing here. Reliability is a key factor here, and this actually is a really good dovetail to the earlier conversation about our legislative services. Key factors of reliability are how the condition of our fleet and the condition of our vehicles, and what we can expect them to do in the field in terms of their performance. We want to make sure that we're putting the best buses on the road that we can, and that they're running as expected as often as possible. And the final aspect here is the cost and how much it costs you versus driving.
I'd like for us to consider adding weekend to the span of services.
Yes, thank you. So we did just a very simplified mapping exercise here. So what this map is showing is a map of Chatham County, and the blue areas, the lighter blue areas, are areas where employment exists. This is based on information from the Department of Commerce. And the darker blue areas are higher concentration. So you can see there's some concentrations around downtown Savannah, around the hospitals, around the malls, and then out in the West Chatham area. And then we overlaid this information with our current system map. So you can see generally where our services are going. And while there aren't, in there you can see that there are some pockets of dense job areas that are, in my opinion, underserved by transit. And I think we can bear that out with more statistical rigor, if necessary. But in general, there are large areas here where the population exists that is reliant on transit, or can use transit to supplement their household transportation choices, where they're simply not able to access it within our county and really within our region. So one of the exercises that Mr. Broker instigated with me was to really look into some of the various research that's been done on this topic recently. So I'm going to present a few quick slides on the research that's out there, and leave you with some facts that you can dig into in your own time. One study that's really triggered a lot of discussion on this topic it's titled the Equality of Opportunity Study, and it generated a lot of publicity. And I just sort of underlined the key takeaway here, which is that shorter commute times are associated with a higher probability of improved economic situation. And this association was stronger than a whole variety of other factors that we might otherwise associate, including factors such as education, two-parent households, crime, etc. So this is a very detailed longitudinal study that Harvard University undertook, and with this somewhat surprising takeaway. There's also been some question as to whether transit is actually less expensive than driving, or driving is actually less expensive in the long run. And the research is relatively clear on this, that driving is the most expensive commuting option for workers of all income levels. So if you have the option to use public transit, you can use more of your income for other needs your household has. And this is one last note here, and kind of a different spin on things is actually the benefits to employers to having transit access in their area. One study that was relatively recent here found that access to fixed route transit actually helps employers retain more of their staff, because they're able to they're not turning over staff because of showing up late and other issues that affect their ability to get to work. So, and So that's it on the research piece, and then the final sort of piece here I want to touch on is what we can do, and what are the next steps that this board and this organization can look into. There's a few spots here, Ms. Osborne, if you.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
After you're done.
Okay, thanks. So the first one is just to make sure that our riders can access employment destinations within our entire metropolitan area. I think that's an important one. I think that's a key one. You've got to be able to get to the location. On the other side of that is helping our regional employers understand the value of transit services can bring to their companies and to their bottom line. And then really, from my perspective in the planning department, is responding to initiatives that are out there that are really trying to connect communities through these types of efforts. And there are two that I'll just mention briefly. One is the Partnership for Sustainable Communities, which is a interagency effort at the federal side to partner housing, environment, and transportation for more sustainable outcomes. And the second one is the Ladders of Opportunity, which is an effort by the Department of Transportation to connect communities with access to jobs. So we'll be actively pursuing funding opportunities in those two domains, as well as exploring all other options regarding federal, state, local, and outside sources of funding to help accomplish some of these goals. So I thank you for your time.
Helen, excuse me, Mary.
I want to just comment about this. Not a turnover, but the fact that there's a lot of development going on President Street. Have we done anything about increasing of the routes out there? Over 2 years ago, I tried to set up a meeting with Reed Delaney and you, and he never followed up. And he's the one that requested some information on that. So we need to look at that.
Right now, it's very interesting with what's going on President Street. And actually, we kind of discussed it yesterday internally, and we have to reach out because one of the things that we looked at and talked to the city about a couple of years ago is along that corridor is where we did maintenance and training for our streetcar. And they pull up the tracks with no intent on replacing them and didn't put the infrastructure in place while you had the opportunity to do so. So, but that's an issue in terms of if you have a desire to do it as part of the planning process. But we're still moving in that direction. But that's an issue.
That's one aspect. What about bus routes?
Well, we haven't looked at it yet, but we will certainly look at it as part of the development as it goes along.
Thank you.
Now, since we're talking here and all, what's good is that the information that the two of them have given us and all, but Susan, I don't know if you have these statistics or not, but there are 24,000 people in the latest federal census, and for 2014, there are 24,000 people without transportation. And in that, since we do have that new company that's going to be lobbying, I think the message should be how we are helping people, that we need this money because it will help in many areas of the community. People low income, whatever the title might be to them. Plus we can see things that are going on in our community now. If we can get into the community and do a number of things, transit can't do everything, but we've had some of our people went to the American Transit meeting in Denver, and they brought back great information, how the monies were put in there. There are 33 communities that are involved in it now, and transportation was one of their top, and many people that are elected and others in there with the business and all. But one of the things that we can do also is, Chad put this here, that we put together a message that we go to as many businesses, especially the larger ones, that we have in our community, like Mitsubishi, the airplane, Yeah, Gulfstream, that them and others, because you have a lot of big industries like at the port area and all, that have, like, you got Home Depot, many of them have these huge warehouses. And unfortunately, what is happening, and we know this on this board, that a number of people, because there's been some opt-out and that no monies were put into it, that you've got people early in the morning that start out maybe 5, 6 a.m. in the morning and walk to work because they don't have the transportation. And so I know some of you here know that there are some 80 organizations that are committed to step up, in the community. But we need to get together and put some things there, Susan, that will help out, and then we understand about transportation. Unfortunately, we don't get any money from the state of Georgia for operations or anything. People didn't vote on it, which would have helped. We would have been able to do other things. And some of these other cities, they can see that how it has been very positive for them by joining up with this organization. And we're going to bring the chairman of that Denver organization to our particular area with a couple of his top people and a number of months from now, so that we can get a lot of people involved in it. But what we do is those organizations that you have, if you could get them to support things, to write letters to the state and basically to those like the transportation committees that are up on a federal level, because what it does, once they get a huge amount of communications, they look at it then. But the message should be really good, that shows how wonderful it's going to be, with this situation. Because our board understands that, and unfortunately our budget is tight, but we've been able to issue some transfers out to some organizations in the community to help them so that they'll be able to go to and from work like that. But the other thing, like you had up there about medical and shopping and those kind of things, you see you've got a lot of people in the community just are lacking, and they have to suffer that situation where they don't have transportation to go there. And so the more people that we've got on board, and to elected officials coming on board, that the situations that you're having there, to be able to assist in that one area, because the message is also how bad do these people need, the transportation to go to these other areas. But we're going to be working, because this board is loyal and dedicated to the citizens of our community, and we've got great leadership and staff members and all. But because of lack of funding, there is things that we are unable to do at this particular time. And now we're even having meetings every month now, instead of every few months, for people to come in who are riders and bring information to us, and whatever we can do, to pass that information on. But working together with people coming on board with us, that'll help step up, it'll help the Chatham Area Transit Authority, mobility, and we can see wonderful things happening in our community. I thank both of you on behalf of this board for coming to us today, giving us this information, because we can see how important it is and how people are lacking in the community. And unfortunately, we've got a number of people, a huge amount of people, that are in bad straits in our community that people don't even know about. And it's sad to have that going on.
Pete, before we close out on this, I did want to personally thank Nick and Suzanne for everything they did to put this presentation together. And I think the thing that's the most compelling about this is the mention about indicators. and indicators for economic success. And while we can't do anything about, 2 and 1 parent households, we can't really do anything about test scores, we really can't do anything about crime. What we can do is something about transit. And transit, apparently, based on this new research, is the primary indicator of people's ability to achieve economic success. And that opportunity is what we're charged with here. And I really appreciate the opportunity to present that to this group.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Good job.
Well said.
Any other comments? Okay, thanks again, Susan.
Thank you very
and
much.
Nick. Appreciate it. Okay, next on the agenda is the Executive Director's Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will make a couple of highlights, but I'll leave most of the details to the unit updates. As you know, this month we have a new unit updates in which the staff will comment briefly on those. The key things in terms of our key performance indicators, as we talked about, which is the standard, in terms of our ridership productivity, which is the bus passengers per revenue hour, our target is 18 or greater. We're at 18. Our efficiency, which is our cost per revenue hour, is $6.85. Revenue mile is $6.85. We're at $6.27. Safety, preventable accidents per 100,000 miles, that number should be less than 2. We were at 0. I will make a side note right here. We've had 3 consecutive months of 0 preventable accidents, which I think is approaching, if it's not a record for CAT. So we will be having a cookout celebration on the 25th. Curtis will be cooking.
Save my plate, I'm in town.
For all the employees. But on the 25th, all the board members are welcome to come out, but it's 3 months of 0 preventable accidents.
Good.
In terms of service quality, the number of passenger complaints per 100,000 passengers, we look for that number to be less than 10. We're at 6.8. In terms of the quality of service, the mean distance between vehicle breakdowns and failures, our goal is 12,000. We're at 14,305. And our on-time performance, which is 1 minute early, 5 minutes late, we look to be at 90% or greater. We're at 78%. Additionally to the cookout, I'd like to introduce William Stewart. He is our new transit planner, recent graduate of Auburn University. He is also a native of Savannah, graduated from Country Day. And if anybody know anything about me, in spite of the fact he graduated from Country Day, and in spite of the fact he went to Auburn, we still hired him. I mean, you couldn't find 2, never mind. Also, I would like to announce that we have hired a new Chief Development Officer who will be on board next month. His name is Adam Giabroni. That's right. Okay, so he'll be on board next month. He will be replacing Ramon Robinson, who left and is doing well up in Virginia. And I think that's all I have for this moment.
Yes.
I have a question. On page, the status report, when I'm looking at the numbers.
Oh, we're going to get to that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes,
Did I
ma'am.
jump there? All right, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, that's personal privilege.
Sure.
Curtis, I won't be there to eat your stuff. But my grandson and my daughter are graduating with their master's degrees in business administration from the University of Phoenix on the 26th, and we'll be in Florida. Save me some.
Okay, next, item 6, unit updates, and this is for information only. All of you were given that, you had it in your books and on your agenda.
Yes.
It was service delivery update, safety included.
Curtis?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, this new board report has a lot of information, so I just wanted to go through a few things, but certainly if there's something that sticks out for you, please let me know. The fare box recovery ratio was 17.4, which is down from last year, but is still in line with our budget, which is 17.7. And as Dr. Reese mentioned in the previous KPI thing, the complaints, 6.8 for July of 15, which is still in line with where we want to be. Did very well again with accidents, having no accidents this past July, 2 compared to last year, and our efficiency passengers per hour is equal to last year. Complaints on paratransit, if you notice that, it's gone down dramatically, and we are continuing to work hard to reduce those. And our productivity with paratransit has gone up significantly, and we're going to continue to work on that as far as being more efficient with our fleet and our clients. We did have 1 injury in July. If you would flip the page to ridership, our fixed route ridership for July was down 0.5% compared to last year. If you look at a breakdown of that, you'll see that the weekday was actually up 0.2% and the weekend is actually down. And so we've identified a few routes that are actually are down over the weekend, and we're going to be working with marketing and working towards getting those routes ridership for the weekend up. Paratransit, you can see, is
Excuse me for 1 second, sir, if I may. You'll see Saturday is down 3%, but Sunday is down.
What the number, the page on that?
On number 5.
It just says July 2015 ridership. Tab 6.
And the interesting thing, as we talked about, with the new reporting format, will allow us to begin to look more targeted at some of our ridership trends, as opposed to just as a system. Where are we looking at specifically? And we know that Sunday we have an issue here, and it becomes easier for us now to target down and begin to look at what is the issue we're facing on Sunday compared to weekday. Go ahead, Curtis.
In light of that, let's expand a little farther. The next thing I'm working to do is actually break down weekday, weekend ridership by route, average ridership, so we can go even further drill down to really pinpoint where we're suffering and where we need to pick it up, both from just a ridership standpoint, but as marketing as well. And then the CAT Freedom, if you look at that, that's compared to last year because we didn't have a number there last year, so you'll see that as time goes on, you'll see it more comparable as the data picks up. The water ferry, huge numbers in July, 12%, which is a lot. Basically, there was an extra event this past July as opposed to the previous year, so that did help boost the numbers. So for all modes, we're looking at 2.6% up in ridership. And the fixed route detail, basically it just outlines the number of days and just information for you to better understand behind how we're getting these numbers, the data involved, and it just kind of repeats the ridership down below. There is a mistake on the express ridership. That should be 51.4% on 105.9.
And the reason the weekday, Saturday services are important is because the way we reported in the past, we would have this month compared to that month, but you will have the anomalies in terms of you have more weekdays or more Saturdays, so on and so forth. So this kind of levels the playing field and getting an apples to apples comparison.
If you wouldn't mind skipping ahead to we'll make sure that these pages are numbered, but it's right after the graphs, it says fixed route July 2015 wheelchairs and bicycles. It's right after the graph. There's 2 graphs, and then it's before paratransit.
At the bottom of the stone.
So our wheelchairs on our fixed route buses is down 11%, and our bicycles are actually up 11%.
And this kind of is a date back to one of the things that Commissioner Farrell, when he was on the board, had talked about is a number of bicycles. As you know, the CAT board passed a motion that day to include three position bicycle rights on all future purchases as opposed to just two. And we updated our 40-foot fleet with additional bicycle rights because one of our continuing complaints was a lack of bicycle capacity. And from that day until now, as we begin to count more and more, we see the number of bicycles are increasing. So it's 3,200 bicycles for the month. And the bicycles are important for that first mile, last mile connection, that if you stay a certain distance away from a bus stop, it eases to commute both ways.
So moving ahead to the paratransit reports, if you wouldn't mind turning to that. This is just some information beyond just how many riders we had, breaking it down by how many personal care attendants, which were down 40%, companions, total wheelchair trips are down almost 20%. And if you look at trip cancellations, it's interesting to note that our no-shows are down 20%, and we're going to continue to drive that number down because that's really what hurts our productivity. And we have sent out letters. We have used our point system, and so we're going to just continue moving in that direction because the people that do not let us know that they can't ride, it just really hurts our travel time.
I just had a quick question about the wheelchair ridership is down. So in trying to move more people from paratransit to mainline, we're kind of going in the wrong direction if you just look at that one statistic.
Well,
I mean, do you think part of it has to do with the cap freedom? Maybe that.
Well, it's a couple things. First of all, it's down on both paratransit and fixed route, and then this is the first month that we began tracking it to actually see that we've actually looked at and began to analyze. The most interesting thing that comes out from that to me is the whole notion that while your wheelchair trips are down, your overall ridership is still up. So of the 7,300 customers who use the service, 1,500 were wheelchair. So synonymously, people will begin to think that paratransit services are associated with wheelchair customers. And in this situation, it's showing us that we have a large portion of our ridership base who use paratransit services that are not in wheelchairs. The second thing that we look at is, yes, there's a decrease in the number of same-day cancellations, no-shows, but those numbers are still outside of industry norms, extremely high. What that means is we still have a vehicle, we still have an operator, we still have the customer service rep, we're still making the trip, and there's no one there to be picked up. That has been a tremendous cost on our paratransit services. So what we've done, yes, a couple of years ago, is the notion of trying to reduce the number of cancellations and no-shows, and we're still around 9-10%. Was that number same day? And we need to be below 5%. And the number was at some point as high as 20%. So we still have some ways to go to improve that. And of course, we have the new systems in place with the point system where we count no-shows and things of that nature. But that number needs to go down because it's an inconvenience to the rest of the customers on the system, and it's a cost associated.
I mean, I think that's the main point, is that people that don't call in and, you know, it results in a no-show, they don't realize that they're taking a trip away from somebody else that would be able to get a trip.
And let's see, to increase what we're doing to let these people that are no-shows, how important it is that they're hurting someone else, like it was just mentioned by Wayne, and to do that. But are we still working with the people that are using paratransit that they can use the regular service instead of, are we having much of a result in that area?
Well, our ridership was up 3.6% on paratransit, and it's typically up much higher than that. So we'll begin to look at it, but yes, that's still our efforts, we're still working in that direction to move more and more customers to our fixed route services.
Somewhere along the line, we need to be able to communicate, to those who are not, calling in to cancel and stuff like that. Make sure that they understand that they're taking away, from others, that we need for them to be more responsive, in their efforts, or they will be having the services.
Wayne?
Well, I know that we've talked about travel training and we've talked about using Project Action, but we've been talking about that for a while. Do we have anything specific on the horizon?
I'll need to follow up with you because I do know we put some of those notions into place, and but I'll follow up with you on that.
Helen?
Just a couple of things, under the status report. Is there a way, and I'm going back right behind the tab, we're looking at July 2014's numbers, July of 2015, and then the projections for 2016, an average there. Is there a way to get a year-end summary in there? In other words, for the fare box recovery, I'm just using the top line, for July of 2014, it was greater than 2015, but what was the yearly?
That's what those average numbers will show.
Yeah, the year started July 1st, so the yearly is going to compile as each month goes on, but the first month is only going to have that month's data because it's July starts the year.
But I guess what I'm saying is from 2014, I'm trying to figure out, you all have got 2015's numbers, where we were a year ago to where we are now.
Right, that's what that is. It says FY because our fiscal year 16 started in July of 15.
So these are numbers really from...
They're running year-to-date numbers.
Okay, but because that's a little confusing when you're looking at it, and I'm looking at 2016 numbers and we're in 2015.
So we're in fiscal year 2016.
I understand that, but it's the way it's written is a little bit confusing. My next question would be, on these routes that are suffering, the Prowler, which is down 83%, and the airport we've already talked about, and the Abercorn Express, I mean, these are large percentages to be down.
The Prowler, as you know, the Prowler is the late night service.
Right.
So you should see that pick up in August and then in September, because it's mostly geared towards students. And so there are fewer students, but we're looking at that because we should not be running the Prowler during the summer.
Well, I'm just saying to be down 83% is a huge, huge number, and I think you're right. Maybe the Prowler does not need to be run in the summer, and I don't know what we're going to do about the Abercorn Express.
There is a change coming to the Abercorn Express in October service change.
All right, and you've already addressed the Saturday and Sunday routes. Okay, those were my questions.
All right.
He's got a few more.
Yeah, just real quick. The trip purpose, as you can see, that's all says NA. We still are working with our software provider to try to track that information, so that's why. Paratransit certifications, 24 of them were new for July, and we had 1 recertification, and 4 people were designated for functional assessments, which all passed. The bike share, if you look at that for July, is down 16%. And I want to skip ahead to risk management. We had three claims open for July that were insignificant with a combined expected cost of $20,000. We had 3 claims closed at $17,500. Workers' comp, we have 2 open claims that are significant and 3 insignificant with a total expected cost of $134,400. And then if you could skip ahead to communications, showing our website usage real quick. Our total users are up almost 3%. Our page views are down 33%, and actually that's a good sign because that means they're not having to go through our website multiple pages to try to figure out what they're looking for. They're finding it quicker. Our newsletter snapshot is trending positively in both of those categories, and all of our social media snapshot, if you look at the percent change from last year, is all positive, and a lot of them are pretty high. Our Fair Pass sales, which is on the next page, kind of outlines what kind of passes we're selling or we sold during July, as well as the high number of passes we sold at the fare box on the bus, over 7,000. Employment activity, we had 5 terminations, 1 voluntary resignation, and 1 reinstatement in the bargaining, and 2 new hires and 1 voluntary resignation in the non-bargaining. A lot of those terminations were new hires that didn't make it during the training. And then, we don't have to point out every single detail, but we got fleet maintenance, and there's some projects scheduled and completed if you want to have any questions on those. And if you continue on to fixed route operation activities, we have the on-time performance, which was up from last year slightly, and paratransit on-time performance remained even from last year. And we continue to push forward and try to get our on-time performance improved.
Mr. Chairman,
I just wanted to make a comment because we've talked a lot in the past about paratransit. And it is interesting with your reduction in no-shows and some of the other changes you've made that your revenue hours are actually less.
Productivity's up.
And you carry more passengers, which is a good trend if it keeps up for the rest of the season.
I just think the whole board needs to thank Curtis for this kind of detailed information, because you can actually pinpoint and fix problems easier when you have it down to this detail. This show.
And from now on, every page is to be numbered.
Yes, sir.
We've got the people there, all of the members, and you can see everyone on this board here flipping pages. So, I mean, I want to make sure that the next time, every page is numbered.
Yes, sir.
I just reiterate that.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, next, system development update.
Yes, sir. Nick?
Thank you, Dr. Reese, Mr. Chairman. System development update. We continue to coordinate with the MPO through the various committees, including the Technical Coordinating Committee, Citizens Advisory Committee, and the Committee on Accessible Transportation, as those are recurring meetings, and coordinate with them on various grant requests and other issues. Over the past month here, staff has also attended the open house for the East Broad K-8 school and set up a table in the lobby to distribute information about CAT services. Myself and Mr. Gagdumas attended the multimodal operations planning workshop. That was a presentation by APTA in Houston earlier this month, and I presented on some of the partnerships that CAT engages in to work with our local hospitality community.
And if you recall, we talked about it at a previous board meeting.
Right.
That next paper it got selected for national presentation.
There are approximately 500 in attendance, so it was a very interesting workshop. A lot of good takeaways from it. On August 19th, staff attended a meeting held at the Armstrong Center, sponsored by Community Indicators Coalition, in conjunction with Chatham County, to discuss issues in the county. On the 25th, CAT sponsored and staff attended the Earmark Encourage Health Luncheon, which specifically encourages good health education. And one final update on the marketing outreach is that staff met with Armstrong State University staff to discuss the implementation of a UPass program for their students, similar to the arrangement that we currently have with Savannah State University. On the planning legislative front, staff are working closely with the state Roads and Tollways Authority on the acquisition of funds from the Georgia Transit Bond, which was passed as a part of House Bill 170. We are also participating in the city's Mobility Advisory Committee regularly, which is a function of the city manager to acquire input relating to pedestrian, bicycle, and transit users within the city. We've also been working with the city of Savannah to expand the cat bike program and select new sites for that and acquire the local matching funds. We are also working with our partners at the Savannah Mobility Management Board to install the City Hall Landing Shelter, which is a structure at the foot of City Hall near the Hyatt on the Riverwalk there for our ferry passengers. And we continue to work closely with Cutter on the West Chatham Mobility and District Expansion Feasibility Study and the implications of that. So those are our updates.
What is the completion of that date, where they're working on the dock areas down from City Hall?
We are currently waiting for a green light from Georgia Power, who is relocating a power line under there. Once we have that, we should be approximately 5 to 6 weeks from completion. So we should have an exact date by the next board meeting.
Does the Georgia Power give you any idea when they're going to be completing that? Because they've had that half blocked off for about 2.5 months now.
The last I heard is that we should have a notification from Georgia Power within 2 weeks.
There's an issue with the shelter on River Street in Georgia Power. Given that the size of the shelter and the construction requirements required it to have footers deeper than originally anticipated. So since the footers are larger than originally anticipated, the power line had to be relocated. As you know, this is a joint project between several government agencies, in which CAT had volunteered to take the lead on, and the city decided to, and I'm happy the city stepped up to the plate and not CAT. So we have a power line relocation issue. And what's the cost on the relocation?
Approximately $30,000.
$30,000 to relocate a power line. That's, so thank you to all of the city representatives. We appreciate it.
Yeah, it is
Okay.
Pete, can I ask a question?
Yes.
What is the status on the state transit bond funding? Are we in line for some of that?
We have webinars. We have a straight state transit bond party on Tuesday, and then we have an after party on Thursday. So we'll be meeting internally, having a webinar with the representatives of SORTA in terms of the dynamics of how the program is going to go forward, what we'll need to do. Okay. So we'll be working on that this week, or next week actually.
So do we feel positive about that?
Of course.
Okay.
Always.
All right. And what about the siting of the new bike sites?
If I may?
Whomever.
Yeah. We worked with Belinda McDonald and Parking Mobility Services to determine the proposed locations. So we're working through her. At this point, we have 5 candidate sites, and we're going to be exploring the permitting process for those. One of them is off right of way. The other 4 are on public sidewalks.
Okay. Next, financial update.
Sir.
Good morning. Your financial update includes operating results for the first month of our fiscal year. Our revenues totaled $1.8 million with expenditures of $1.7 million, which gave us revenues over expenditures of right at $25,000. This $25,000 income is $15,000 better than budget. So with the first month in the books, it looks like we're still stable and on trend. Our debt reduction plan is still in place. We'll pay the line of credit down to 0 before it expires in December. Actually, it expires the last day of the year. Our auditor is on site. He's completed probably half of his field work. He'll be here this week and next week, and we still anticipate the report being issued, well, maybe not well before, but right before the county deadline of October 2nd. We'll handle any questions you may have about the report or the financial results.
Just gonna make a comment. I'm sorry.
The benefit lines and all of the categories seem to be quite a bit over this month.
Right, I double checked the budget, and the budget is calculated correctly. I have staff walking through the payroll module assignments, which is what generates the expense side. It's a little complicated to check each employee, but we should have that sorted out by next month.
So you don't think that's a correct number in the actual?
I think that the expense is overstated due to the way the payroll is allocating it from the payroll system, and we can get that corrected.
Pete, I was just gonna make a comment on the, our fuel costs. Thank goodness that we're saving so much money
Right.
on fuel.
Yes, it did help us last year, mitigate some of the increased maintenance costs due to the age of the fleet.
Right.
And it continues to help us every month stay within budget, but of course, we budgeted the fuel high or stable, so that if prices start going up, we'll still be on budget with that category.
Okay.
Okay. Howard?
I was just talking to Wayne.
Oh, I thought you
Internal
wanted
chatter.
to-
Internal chatter.
Okay.
Not paying attention.
All right. Next is old business, the paratransit vehicle procurement status update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to update the board on the current paratransit vehicle procurement. In April, the board approved the award for 3 paratransit vehicles for $300,000 off the state contract. The vehicles underwent some administrative revisions that resulted in lower costs of the vehicles themselves to a cost of about $58,000 a piece. With those 2 administrative changes and a need for 2 more vehicles, incidentally, we authorized, it's no additional money, actually it's less money, the purchase of those 2 vehicles. So I wanted to make the board aware of that change. So it's less money, we're adding 2 vehicles to the fleet.
These are the MV ones?
No, these are cutaways.
Okay, any other questions on old business? Okay, under old business, what's our status right now in our marketing department about, so that we can have a real good message put out to encourage people to become riders?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, as the board approved the contract with for marketing consulting firms, we have executed 1 contract. We're hopeful to have the other 2 contracts executed in the very near future. We will, as part of this, in particular when the new chief development officer comes on board, along with Ms. Roundtree, we will probably ask you to authorize a special board retreat that maybe coincide with the legislative agenda retreat to discuss our overall marketing program approach and what we're doing.
Okay, so that's just discussing it. It doesn't show like a video, what they'll be put out on television and other areas.
Yes, sir. As you recall, we looked at some targeted things that we discussed at the last board meeting on the 100X, but that's certainly something we could look at bringing back in terms of we have quite a bit of collateral that's been produced, but yes, sir, we'll look at setting that up for you.
Wouldn't we want to wait until we have people come on board and perhaps shore that up?
Yes, ma'am. That's what we're proposing to do.
Any other old business? New business? Chad?
No, sir, no new business.
Anything? You have something?
I'd just like to make a comment.
Sure.
If I may. Thank you. I'm sitting here today and I'm excited about all the wonderful things that I'm hearing about the progress that CAT has made and continues to make. So today I would like to thank Dr. Reese and his wonderful staff for the team concept that you have put together to make a difference in Chatham area transit. I would also like to thank the board members here for your leadership, because without your leadership, and I'm included in this as far as working with you, I just want to say that it's a joy to come here and to sit at this table and recognize the kind of leadership that we have, which is not negative. I really, really appreciate that as a senior member of this board. And I started not to say that, but you know, you never know. So I decided I would say that today. And I just wanted you all to know, I just wanted you all to know how I feel about this board, how I feel about Dr. Reese. I worked so hard and I nearly drove him crazy before he came to Savannah. And I'm so delighted that he decided to come, because we're seeing a tremendous difference in the way that CAT operates and looking towards the future. Thank you all so much for this opportunity.
Well, you can look at the last 70 years, the history, or even longer than the last 70 years, that right now our transit system is operating better than it has been in 70 plus years. All you got to do is look at the history there. And of course, you know, with Chad on board and all of the members here and your participation in it, and of course all of the staff members, that's really good, because we can be really proud of what has happened and going to happen because of this board doing the things that are necessary to help the staff and of course our leader with Chad. Okay, anything else? Okay, meeting adjourned.
Right.
Curtis, hang on, John. Hang
Oh,